This trip to Thailand was my boyfriend Ma Chun's idea. My parents happened to have time off and could join us on the trip. I thought it was a great opportunity to relax and maybe get to know Ma Chun better. I was born into a wealthy family, and my relationship with Ma Chun has never been approved by my parents. Ma Chun is a dedicated but low-income drainage expert, although they always treated him politely. They never truly respected him. On the third night, Ma Chun suggested we try a local restaurant he discovered. The food was at an old-fashioned place, hidden in an older district of Bangkok. The food was incredibly delicious. My father, who was usually quiet, couldn't stop praising the dish. This tom yum soup is amazing. As the night fell, the atmosphere at the table became warmer and more enjoyable. Our conversation was filled with laughter. It felt like our relationship was starting to ease up. But the next morning, my parents were nowhere to be found. There was no sign of forced entry or struggle in the room. Their luggage was still there. Over the next few days, Ma Chun and I searched non-stop for any clue about my parents' whereabouts. We visited nearby hospitals, checked other hotels, and even searched local markets and tourist attractions, hoping someone might have seen them. The police also received a report, but there was no progress. We reviewed the surveillance footage, but still found no leads. Weeks went by with no progress. We returned home. The mystery of my parents' disappearance cast a shadow over our lives. Ma Chun stayed with me through those tough days. One evening, he proposed to me at home. We started planning our wedding, dreaming of a small, romantic ceremony. A month after returning home, I discovered I was pregnant. Considering the situation at the time, this news made us both happy and anxious. My parents' disappearance had left me feeling down. Talking to Ma Chun about our future family gave me a sense of comfort and happiness. But the peace was short-lived. 2 months later, the investigation had a new development. This time, I went to Thailand alone. Because the night before I left for Thailand, Ma Chun suddenly said his father had fainted due to high blood pressure and needed immediate medical attention. He had to stay behind to take care of his father and promised to join me as soon as possible. After arriving in Thailand, I was called to the police station. A police officer led me into a small, dimly lit room and motioned for me to sit down. His expression was serious. I could feel that what he was about to tell me would be devastating. "Miss Cao Li," he began to say, "we've made significant progress in the investigation into your parents' disappearance. Now you need to listen carefully to what I have to say." I nodded, my heart racing. "Your Ma Chun is not as perfect as you think. We've collected evidence proving that he's committed a heinous crime. The restaurant where you and your parents had your last meal is owned by Ma Chun's good friend. We obtained the surveillance footage showing Ma Chun and his friend moving a suspicious large bag in the middle of the night I shook my head in disbelief. No, that's impossible. Marjan would never. The police officer raised his hand to stop me. I know this is hard to believe, but the evidence is conclusive. We found matching bloodstains and DNA in a hidden basement under the restaurant. This basement was used to carry out the murders. Your parents were drugged and taken there, and then brutally murdered. He paused, and then continued. The surveillance footage we found was severely damaged, but our forensics team was able to restore it using advanced technology. The footage clearly shows Marjan and his accomplice carrying your unconscious parents to the basement. I was falling apart, unable to accept this truth. There must be some mistake, I pleaded. Marjan loves me. He would never hurt my parents. The officer's expression softened slightly. I know this is difficult to accept, but we have witnesses who saw Marjan and his friend acting suspiciously, and the tools they used have also been found. They match the DNA evidence. He took a deep breath, and then revealed the most shocking detail. The remains were disposed of and stored in the restaurant's refrigeration unit. Marjan and his friend mixed small portions of the remains into the meat served to customers. This horrifying act was also confirmed by several employees who had noticed unusual activity and strange smells, but were too afraid to question their employer. The officer presented a mountain of evidence, but my heart refused to believe it. The Marjan I knew was kind, loving, and respectful. I couldn't bring myself to believe that he could be the monster who brutally murdered my parents. The officer continued, his tone turning even more serious. Miss Cal Lee, there's one more thing you need to know. Marchand's accomplice is no longer alive, but he revealed Marchand's motive to us. According to the accomplice, Marchand harbored resentment toward your parents. They looked down on his humble background and demanded a dowry of 200,000 yuan as a condition for your marriage. Marjan saw this as an insult and couldn't bear the thought of paying such a sum. This ultimately led him to orchestrate this heinous act. My mind was reeling. I was determined to confront Marjan, to hear his side of the story. I couldn't believe that the police were accusing him of such a horrific crime act. I needed to hear the truth from him. Now, as I sat on the plane ride home, I clutched my growing belly, feeling the gentle movements of our unborn child. Movements. My heart was filled with doubt and fear, but also a desperate hope for a reasonable explanation. A hope that this was all a misunderstanding, that he could be cleared of these charges. The plane began its descent, and I braced myself for the confrontation to come. Whatever the truth may be, it would be revealed in a matter of hours.